Hey, it's Daniel back with another dad vlog, and here are 10 ways to talk to your kids about war. I thought this would be great to do since we're dealing with the Russia-Ukraine conflict going on right now. And I'll admit it, as an American, I did not do my research. I did not know as much as I now know because I've done a little bit of research in the past 48 hours about what has been going on. I feel a little embarrassed. I know I'm not the only one. Sometimes as Americans, we just are so caught up in our own issues that we don't take the time to even know what in the world is going on outside of our borders. But number one, I thought this was cool. This was from an article from verywellfamily.com. Strike up a conversation with your child. Simply just talk to them about war. Talk about your experiences. A lot of times if you have a kid that's been alive at least since the 2000s, they have been alive during a lot of our conflicts with Afghanistan, and so it's been around. They just may not be aware of it. And so just having a simple conversation, bringing it up, is one thing you can do. Number two, find out what your child is overhearing. I think this is brilliant. You never know what your child may already know, especially with technology, what they've already researched, or maybe they didn't research it, but like myself and a lot of you all watching, you get retargeted with ads and information when you're on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter about these things. So, find out what they already know and, what they're overhearing and kind of work off that. Number three, the next one, explain the purpose of war. This one can be a little tough. But I love what the article explains. Your child will likely want to know why we are in a war. Keep your explanation simple by saying something like war is meant to prevent more bad things from happening in the future. You can look at that in many different ways. There are many reasons why individuals go to war. It also states you might also talk about how war is meant to protect certain populations. Make it clear that violence isn't a good way to resolve the conflict, but sometimes countries decide they need to start a war to keep people safer in the future. I love how that was said. The next one says, hold back when necessary. I think that's crucial. I know growing up, my dad was a military veteran. He went to Operation Desert Storm, as well as he was a flight medic in Desert Storm, and was also a paramedic here in Charleston County, where I grew up. And there's so many things that I know he saw as a flight medic. I can only imagine some of the horrifying things. But he didn't really unleash everything to me, when I was 6 or 7 years old. And as time went by, I learned more and more about some of the things that he saw and experienced. So I think, learning to hold back a little bit when explaining things that are going on with conflicts or wars with your child, that's super important. Avoid harmful stereotypes. Goodness, this is a classic hard one, especially for us as Americans. If you're an American watching, that is to not stereotype. I'll tell you what, my dad taught me one thing, and that is that he said everybody's a little prejudiced against somebody or something. And he said that the people you have to worry about the most are the individuals that don't think they're prejudiced against anything. And he's so right. Whether it's a group of people, whether it's religious, whether it's the way somebody, votes, their political views, it's wild how we all will have these hidden prejudices, and avoiding that when talking about war and conflict can be very tough to do. But that's one crucial thing to do when it comes to raising your child. I love what the article says. And if you're going to share your opinions, talk about how you feel about the war in general. There's a chance that you might not agree with the purpose of the war or the act of military intervention. You can share that with your children, particularly if you feel that the rationale behind your beliefs is part of your family's values. So I think that's a good thing to be careful with. Avoid, not avoid talking about stereotypes, but just to be very, very careful, because stereotypes can be harmful. We all learn that. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you come from. People stereotype other people, whether it's white and black people here, and that goes both ways. Or when I even think about Russia and the Ukraine, imagine the people from the Ukraine living in Russia, what they're dealing with. And of course, the Russians that may be living in the Ukraine after all this is over. Imagine how that's going to be. The next one says, watch media coverage alongside older kids and teens. I think this is fantastic. I did this growing up with my dad, and it was a great way to be able to kind of bond with my pops. Some people don't like to watch things like this, but it kept me informed and it allowed me and my dad to be able to bond a little bit. And it helped me, grow my views and become my own man, because my dad would give his 2 cents and insight that would make me self-reflect on, how do I feel about the situation, while watching the news and media with my dad. Now, sometimes they can do the opposite, if you have opposing views, but I think even with opposing views, it's good. You can learn so much from somebody who does not think like you. That's so important. The next one says, encourage compassion. I think this is super duper important, because we sometimes forget, being that these conflicts and wars happen so far away, we forget that these are human beings. These are people. These people have children as well. And sometimes we forget that they exist alongside with us. You'll see things on TV, and sometimes we get numb to these things that we see on TV and in the media. We get numb to things that happen right in our neighborhoods. And so just imagine how numb we may feel to something on the other side of the planet. I didn't even think to look up anything on Russia and Ukraine until the past 48 hours, when this has been going on. The tension has been going on for quite some time, longer than 48 hours. And then point out the good people who are helping. I think this is so crucial as well, because by pointing out good individuals who are helping when it comes to war or conflict, it can also lead to a way that your child can be involved. There are opportunities to donate and support individuals who are suffering due to a war or conflict. So I think that's important, pointing out good people who are helping, finding the Robin Hoods. Monitor your emotional state, not just for your child, but for yourself as well. For myself, I'm talking to myself as well. It's so easy to get caught up in these things in a very emotional, you can't help but get emotional at times, but sometimes you can get so emotional that you kind of lose yourself. And it can drive you up a wall, especially when you're miles and miles away, and there's only so much that you can do about it. So just be careful not to allow yourself to build anxiety, and that can also then go down on the child. I look at that when it comes to trauma that people face in their lives, or family trauma. Sometimes with the parent dealing with one thing, that trauma gets passed down to the child. Lastly, keep an eye on your child's distress. If you see a kid consuming tons of content regarding war and what's going on, make sure you put a cap on how much they consume. This stuff, especially with the algorithms of social media. Remember, the Google algorithm, YouTube algorithm, these algorithms, TikTok, they're built to make you find more of what you want to see, or what they think you want to see. So you take the time to Google Russia and the Ukraine, you watch 2 or 3 videos or read an article or 2, next thing you know, you're getting targeted with everything about the whole Russia and Ukraine situation. And then it leads to you consuming different forms of propaganda and stuff that maybe even fake news, which fake news is everywhere. So you'll fall down that rabbit hole, and it can really mess you up. I hope that you enjoyed these 10 awesome ways to talk to your kid about war. These are things I'm going to use myself. And let me know if I'm missing something. I'm a new dad vlogger, and I don't want to be one of these guys on here that thinks they know it all. I do not. So let me know in the comments, what's one thing that you would add when it comes to explaining war and conflict to your child.